You're listening to the Breakthrough Investor in Commercial Real Estate Podcast. Brought to you by MVP Equity Group, where we learn from private equity experts, their mindset, and ways to achieve financial independence. Here's your host, Ernest Peralta.
All right, welcome back, Breakthrough Investor listeners. Ernest Peralta here, and today's guest is Tyler Deveraux. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Hey, what's up, man? Glad to be here. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, glad that you're on here as well. Well, he's the managing partner of MF Capital Partners, a privately held multifamily investment company. Tyler has been investing in real estate for over 14 years. And at the age of 21, he actually acquired his first student rental property. He quickly understood the potential of the industry, and he's never looked back since. Tyler controls just under 2,000 apartment units throughout 5 different states, with a valuation of north of $125 million. Tyler's also the founder of Multifamily Mindset, which is an education company that has trained thousands of new and seasoned investors to acquire multifamily properties. So teaching, inspiring, and helping others is Tyler's true passion. So Tyler now lives in Maui with his wife and 2 kids. Again, aloha, Tyler.
Hey, aloha. I love it.
Awesome. Well, with that, can you fill in the gap just a little bit more for our listeners about your backstory? Where did you start and where are you now?
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. How far back do you want me to go, man? You want me to go childhood, or how far back am I going here?
Yeah, well, touch on your childhood a little bit. How did it shape you to where you are today?
No, I love it. I'll briefly touch on it. Raised by, my mom's a single mom. She raised 4 kids, and just an absolute rock star, just so positive, so happy, just, overcoming any and every challenge that was thrown her way. But there was some struggle there. There's definitely some struggle. And, I used to be, it's interesting. I used to look at that struggle as a disadvantage or, a detriment. What in reality, the older that I get, Ernest, the more that I look back and I think, and I realize more than anything that was just a huge blessing. Those things just opened my mind and forced me to go down a direction of starting a business and, making me very curious about wealth, right? I've always been curious about wealth, and it's because we didn't have wealth. And I wanted to know how to obtain that wealth, and I didn't want to be in the struggle. I've been in both positions where we have needed help and needed people to give back. And I've been on the other side of giving back. And I'll tell you that it's a lot better on the other side to be able to give than to get. And so it's motivated me for a very, very long time. Started my first business when I was 16. That was out of need. I needed to do that for me and my family, and that was awesome. And we cleaned people's blinds. It was like the blinds that you have in your home. Mm-hmm. Cleaned those. I had a big machine. It's called supersonic blind cleaning. Great business, awesome business. But I got trained to go to school and do those things. But I'll tell you another pivotal moment for me was when this is when I acquired my first property. I was 21, and I've worked all sorts of jobs at this point, man. I mean, I'm talking roofing houses, framing houses, waiting tables, umpiring baseball games, mentoring troubled youth, did anything that I could do to pay the bills. But then I get this job at 21 that's like my light at the end of the tunnel, right? And I have enough to pay my bills, which felt great. But I was going to buy this, and a little extra that I was going to buy this property, this little townhouse. And this is back in the day once again, and we talked a little bit about this off camera, but this is back in the day when all you needed was a pulse to get approved for a loan, right? Mm-hmm. And I had one of those. I probably shouldn't have been approved, but I was. But I got laid off from my job like a week before closing. But that was a pivotal moment for me because all of a sudden, once again, what could have been viewed as a detriment, and I did view that as a detriment in that given point. I don't know if you or your listeners have ever been laid off before, but that was I just couldn't believe that somebody could pull the rug out from underneath me that quick, But what it made me realize is I never wanted to be in that position again. And so I dropped out of school. For me, that was to get a job to work for somebody else. I still bought that property because I didn't have a lot of money. I was hoping other people could pay me rent instead of me paying rent to somebody else. And I started a business, man. I'd done it before. I wanted to do it again and started a business there. And, the reality is that business people thought I was nuts. I had all sorts of naysayers, and that was a very tough time for me. That business didn't make any money for like 6 months, which was tough. I had to go back to waiting tables. But to answer your question, what happened is I started to see the value of real estate investing. The rent that these tenants were paying me that was paying my bills, man. That was paying my bills. And I realized that if I could find a way to scale that and grow that, it would be a beautiful thing. So, quickly fast forwarding through that a little bit, I started to acquire some single family properties I had no idea what I was doing, right? Like, I was making some money finally through the web business that I'd started. People told me that I should buy properties, and I did, but I was not a real estate investor. Like, dude, I had no idea what was happening there. And then, 08, 09 came, and I got freaking land blasted. I mean, I lost some properties. It was once again another just tough learning lesson for me, that if you're going to buy something or do something or invest in something, that you should probably study that something, And I had not, man. I had just bought because people told me I should buy. But I knew that wasn't my real estate's fault. That was my fault, So I started getting trained. That's when I started flipping some single family properties and, getting a couple more rentals. And then that ultimately parlayed into multifamily when I understood, the growth there.
It sounds like you definitely had some adversity growing up and led you to different entrepreneurial endeavors. I could just totally relate, what you just mentioned there earlier, like, has anybody been laid off? I'm sure there's been a lot of people that has been laid off. I've experienced that at least 3 or 4 times, in my field. I was in technology, and it just comes with the territory, and having the rug pulled under you, like you said. You just don't expect those things, but you learn a couple times, and then you realize, maybe I need a backup plan. Maybe I need to pick up something else to bring another income stream in.
Oh, that's exactly it. That's why it's turned into, situations like that, are really, it's all how you view things, and it can be such a blessing. I mentioned my mom and growing up there. That situation made me curious about wealth, but it also made me obsessed with time. I wanted to be there for everything. My dad had moved out of the country, and my dad is a great dude. I love him. I just talked to him yesterday. I love him to death. He just made, some bad decisions, and it's because, with the best of intentions though, right? But sometimes we have great intentions, but our execution lacks. And what that caused me to do is I saw what it was like to not have someone there, all the time, my dad. But I also saw that regret on his side, and that's motivated me a lot, man, to create something that provides passive income to allow me to be there, man. And I want to be to everything that my kids do. I mean, they're spelling bees, t-ball games, t-ball practices, soccer. I want to be there for everything, And it's driven me for a long time to create a stream of income to allow me to get there. And, I think your first initial question is, where did you start? Where are you at? And how did you get there? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So, I talked a little bit about where I started, and you mentioned about, where I'm at. A little under 2,000 units, over 100 million in assets, about to close on even a whole bunch more even this quarter. And Ernest, that wasn't even on my radar or even in my, scope of like dreaming, man, even 5-6 years ago, And so I'm super grateful for that. Like, anytime I hear somebody run through those numbers, and, it says I've been investing for 14 years in my bio, right? But
yeah.
I mean, I haven't been a true real estate investor, not that long. I just bought properties, but I had no idea what I was doing. But man, scaling into the multifamily space, that's fairly recent. Man, I don't know where your listeners are at within this process, but years wise, I'm not very far down the road. 5, 6, 7 years tops is when I learned about the multifamily space. And I'm just so grateful that I did learn about that and opened up my capacity for what was possible,
Yeah. And just hearing your story too, you're like, you can't believe where you're at right now, having that many doors. But do you think that you were doing things along the way that just ended up blowing up? There's probably some point in time there where you were investing in single family, not knowing exactly that it was going to lead you to multifamily. Do you know when exactly that pinpoint
100%.
changed, and how did it get to that trajectory to where you are today? Can you pinpoint that?
100. Yes. No, I know for a fact when it was, because I literally, Ernest, I had never even read a book about multifamily investing. My belief system, right? What I thought was possible, what I viewed as possible, multifamily was not in that realm of belief, not even at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm flying, I can't remember what I was flying to, but I was in the airport, Salt Lake Airport, flying back home to Washington, D.C., Terminal C is what the terminal I was in. I remember this, like I can picture where it was. And there's a guy, a good friend of mine, his name's, or an acquaintance at that point, but still a friend. His name's Ryan Woolley. And I had known Ryan for a while. He had, ran an internet business, and we both, dabbled into single family space. And I see Ryan at the airport, and we chat for a minute, and he tells me that he's just learned how to acquire apartments, right? It's this normal conversation like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he's like, I just learned how to acquire apartments, man. I'm going to, start acquiring apartments, scaling into and growing into the multifamily space. And I was like apartment buildings, like big apartment buildings? You gotta be kidding me. Like, I had no idea it was even possible, And I remember getting on my flight and flying back and being like, holy shit, dude, I didn't even know that was possible. And Ryan Woolley is my now my partner in MF Capital Partners. That's our investment company. He's also the co-founder of the Multifamily Mindset, which is our education company, and my best friend. I talked to Ryan almost more than I talked to my wife, I feel like. And he's actually out here in Maui right now. I think he just ran to the store or something, but he's actually out in Maui right now. That was that switch for me. That's when I learned about it, though. That's when that view of that it was possible hit. And I went to a training by a guy named Dave Lindahl. You ever heard of him before?
Yes, I have.
I heard Dave talk about this process, and it sunk in, even more of what was possible. And I just knew I was obsessed with finding an avenue that would allow me to acquire wealth, right? But wealth, money, that can be made in so many different avenues. I wanted to provide for my family, and still do, in all aspects, temporally, spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. And I can only do that if I have time, and passive income was the way to get there. And when I learned about multifamily and learned about how it was structured, and once again, my mind became open to it. But just because you learn about something, you see that something's possible, that doesn't mean that you're going to make it possible. In fact, the last of your questions was, how did you get there, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And I would say definitely surrounding myself with people that continue to remind me that it is possible, but also taking ownership of that journey. It's so easy as we're going along the journey to find excuses or negativity, because excuses are easy, negativity is easy, but it's a lot harder to find solutions and to take ownership. And anytime I would come into a struggle, I would find myself kind of slipping into this victim-based mentality almost, like this mentality of, well, because it was a stretch, man. It was a stretch of what I truly thought was possible. And growth at any stage, man, is hard, because you're trying to do something that you've never done, right? And apartment investing works. Like, it's not on trial, but it doesn't, essentially it works just like anything else, which it's believing that you can do it, and focusing on what you can control. And when we do that, our situations, our circumstances begin to change. And so how I got there, I feel like, is taking ownership. The major difference between those who are successful or those who aren't successful, I believe there's a number of differences, but one of those is ownerships. The victim will face a challenge and fail and blame their circumstance, where, the successful person also faces challenges, also fails, but instead of wasting time placing blame, they own it, they study it, and learn from it and continue forward, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
ownership is key.
definitely. So it seems like, also from ownership, but just really pushing yourself, right? And trying to make yourself uncomfortable in those types of situations. It looks like, one, you said you didn't even know anything about multifamily when you were introduced to it, didn't even read a book, and you just relatively got into it fairly new. but you've taken that chance. You took some steps. I'm pretty sure by now you've educated yourself enough to to get over under 2,000 units. So I'm pretty sure you brushed up on your multifamily skills by now. For the most part,
a little bit.
yeah, just a little bit, right? You touched upon those that are successful versus unsuccessful in this business. One of them is definitely taking accountability and ownership. What other areas do you think contribute to that? Because I'd love to hear your story about going from the single family to capturing that very first multifamily property that you did. What did you do along the way? Did you come in as a passive investor, or did you just grab the bull by the horn and say, I'm coming in as an active investor? What was that transition like for you, and how did you come in?
No, I wish I would have been able to passively invest. That would have been awesome. But I had some single family properties, but I did not have liquid money, right? I had some things tied up in single family. So I did not passively invest, but I want to take one step back and, talk about the reason I was able to continue to, I believe, get through some of the hard times. And I'll talk more about this and belief and how it works, but it's also because I had definiteness of purpose. Like, I knew what the goal was. I was obsessed with finding a way to, acquire wealth, but still have time. Right. I never wanted to. I saw my dad pursue a business in hopes that it would provide wealth, but it was at the expense of family. And I've seen a whole bunch of people do that. And I didn't want to fall into that same trap. And so I've been obsessed with being able to find a way to acquire wealth, but not jeopardize family and time and all those kind of things. And so that vision, that focus has been huge, right? That key. Now, I got sidetracked though. What you said, how did I scale? How did I go? How did I get into the first property? I think it was a question, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yes.
Ernest, you're going to have to keep me on track here. Sometimes I get on tangents. You're going to have to reel me back in, okay?
Oh, it's good. I love your story. I love this journey that we're in. So yeah, definitely. That would be the next question right there is.
Okay, so I went to Dave Lindahl's training, man, and I signed up for mentorship. I knew that wasn't, that system, I guess, or that structure wasn't foreign to me. I had done that with pretty much every business that I had structured. I've had mentors and coaches and guidance. And so I did the exact same thing. And that was key to me, man, because as we're doing something new, we doubt ourselves. We all have this doubt because we're doing something that we haven't done. My first deal, 20 unit deal, Birmingham, Alabama. I was terrified, Ernest, to raise money, because I viewed myself as this beggar with my hand out, right? Like, please, dear God, invest in my deal so that I can move forward. But I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be that person. I told you that we had to ask for help a whole bunch growing up, which kind of put me down this other direction of never wanting to ask for help, which, listen, we need to ask for help. We all need help, man, if we're trying to grow. But the key is to understand, it's not that asking for help or a beggar with our hand out, we're providing value. But I'll tell you what I did, because I was terrified to do that, and got this little 20 unit deal sent to me from a direct mail campaign that I've been running. It was in Birmingham, Alabama. It was $339,000 all in. And instead of raising money, I had a credit card that had a 0% interest for, I think it was 12 months. And so I did my down payment on that property, $50,000 from that credit card. The rest was from a hard money loan at 9%. That's a risky deal, man. But I'll tell you, my coach, his name was Jeremy. He was my first coach in the multifamily space. And he pushed me. He was like, Tyler, no, listen, man, do I think you should go a different route and raise funds and, get over your fear? Yes. But if you feel like this is like having a deal underneath your belt is going to make you more confident to raise money, then yes, this is a good deal. And I'm grateful for that push because I needed it. I needed to get past my fears, essentially, man. I had to get past my fears, and I did that deal, and it was a great deal. But then I realized very quickly that to truly scale, you need to use partnerships. And my second deal was a 75 unit deal in Austin, Texas. And that deal, I had no other option but, to start raising capital. And this was another key for me, though, was what I would do is I was terrified of looking. A lot of the times I look at success motivates me, man, but my fears motivate me probably more than anything. I was terrified of looking like an idiot, looking dumb. And so I prepare, man, and I plan. And what I would do is I'd get on these phone calls with Jeremy anytime he'd have an investor call, man, or anybody that I could listen to. I mean, I would get on private money presentations just to listen to how they, how they explain different things. And I would learn, how they would explain things and how they would approach it and how they would tell the story of a deal and how they would handle questions, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would go approach it that way. And I realized that, a lot of people, there was a lot of things that I saw that I liked, a lot of things that I didn't like, but I would go practice, man. I would just go practice having those conversations and trying to make it as conversational as possible, just so that I didn't look dumb or uncomfortable. It was just natural, right? A lot of practice. I laugh when you say, to get to where you are, you had to have studied. I mean, yeah, a lot, man, a lot. And we have a whole education company now because I know how important it is to have information is out there everywhere, man. But relevant information, geez, dude, it's relevant, actionable information, that's harder to find, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how I got into that second deal and started to grow is having conversations at tailgates or at different social gatherings, and then all of a sudden I started to see this interest that people had, this need that people had to invest their money. People with money have different problems, and those problems are they need to find good areas to invest their money, and put it to work. And my first investor was a doctor, and I'll tell you where my mindset shifted was. It was like the first quarter after closing, we send the distribution check, and I get this email thanking me. God, Tyler, man, thanks so much. I'm so excited for these opportunities. I make good money, but if I don't work, I don't make money. And I've always wanted to acquire real estate, but I don't know how. I don't have the time to learn how to do that. And I remember just sitting back in my chair and being like, geez, dude, like what we do is awesome. Like, I'm not asking for money. I'm not a beggar with my hand out. Like, this is an amazing opportunity for investors to place their money into a cash producing asset. That's a hard asset that gets cash flow returns, equity returns, tax incentives. And my mindset shifted, Ernest, and that's where things started to take off for me in the capital raising space.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. You hit on a couple of things there, and I want to kind of take it back a little bit, just a little bit, to where, like you said, when you acquired that very first property, I remember my first mentor that told me in multifamily was, you have to hurry up and get that first multifamily property, no matter how much it takes, what effort it needs to happen to get it, just go and acquire it because you're going to learn. And the story that you just said was you did it by any means. You put it on a card, 12 months, you had to borrow from hard money lenders. You did this by yourself, by the way, right? You didn't have any investors. This was all you at the time.
That was me, man. That risk on that deal was me alone. Yeah.
So after that, after you closed, I'm sure you made a profit off of this as well. How long was it before the time that you purchased that property and you sold it or did you still keep it and then purchase your second property, or did you sell it and then take that equity to your next property that you found?
No, I kept it, and very quickly, we're talking less than a month later, I had that other 75 unit project under contract. And I'll talk about what you just said, because it is so true, man. I call it the law of the first deal.
Yep.
And meaning that first deal is always the hardest. And I'll tell you why. And it's because of belief, man. It's belief. No matter what, if we haven't done something, we are going to doubt to a certain point, right? And belief, if you can expand your belief, that's going to, release creative powers. But if you're disbelieving something, that puts the brakes on, right? Mm-hmm. And if you haven't done that first deal, what happens is the whole journey through, you're wondering, can you really do it? In fact, there's this, and hopefully I don't mess this up, but there's this, the universal law of belief states something along the lines of, we don't necessarily believe what we see. We see what we already have decided to believe, or something like that. So for example, right, two people lose their job. One of those people view it as a blessing, and the other views it as a curse, right? It's the same event. It's the different belief of what the outcome will be, but both will be correct, right? It's how we view things. It's what our belief is. You do that first deal, and your belief expands. Your confidence expands and allows you to grow and scale. And I'll mention one more thing on there, because confidence is key. And it's so funny, because now in the position that I'm in, I'm teaching people all the time, and on podcasts like this, and I think that a lot of the times when somebody sees somebody in my position and sees me teaching a class or on a podcast or whatever, they just assume that we have it all figured out, and that we're just extremely confident people who have it all figured out. And it's just not true. That's just not realistic. But I'll tell you, this is I'm going off on another tangent, Ernest, but I feel like this is an important one.
I like it. Yeah, please continue.
How you gain confidence, in my opinion, and once again, a lot of times our confidence is equal to our belief. Confidence alone means with faith. That means with faith, right? And my mom's a very positive person. She looks at the positive in situations, and I think that that's where I got it from. I would rather focus on the positive than the negative, but confidence, all that means is with faith. It means that you're projecting the best case scenario out into the world, right? And fear is the negative side of faith, meaning you're projecting the worst case scenario out into the world. So confidence comes from hope and belief that things are going to go great. And I'm a pretty spiritual person. What your listeners believe in God or the universe or whatever, or themselves even, I believe in God, and I believe that God wants what is best for me in any given situation. So that gives me hope for the future. And if we don't have hope, then we have fear, and that fear creates these mental stumbling blocks. And and we bring that back in. We're starting something new. Your listeners are going to go out there. They're going to, they're starting something new. Whether that's they're trying to acquire their first apartment, or whether that's they're trying to acquire their 7th apartment, but it's their biggest apartment that they've done. We all have this doubt, or really, we all doubt something that we haven't done. That's a natural thing, and that's fine to a point, right? But what we can't allow ourselves to do is place blame as to why we haven't done it. If that makes sense. I'll give you this example that I just had.
Okay.
I'll give you this example that I just had because it's so relevant, and it's going to be a touchy subject, I'm telling you, but
it's okay. It's good. I love
this example that let's get controversial, right? No, but and I'll give this example. An investor doesn't want to invest with us. A lot of the times our mindset or our blame is that, well, that investor's dumb, or they don't want to invest with me because of, my age, or because of whatever, or a broker or a seller, chooses someone else for a deal. They don't choose us for a deal. And I found myself slipping to the slope of like blaming it on the fact that the rich get richer, or because those people that they chose run in different circles and have different advantages that I don't. But we have to stop telling ourselves these bullshit stories, man. And I'll give you this example. I had a student, and I won't say her name, but I was teaching a class, and she came up to me. This is such an eye opener for me, man. She came up to me at, I think it was like the end of day 3. It was a 3-day class. And she told me that, and I'd been talking about, placing blame and taking ownership and all those kind of things. And she told me that she thought that she'd been trying to get deals. And she said, Tyler, the reason that I thought that I wasn't getting deals, I'm talking to all these brokers, and the reason that I thought I wasn't getting deals is because brokers were racist. She's an African-American lady, and she says, I thought that these brokers were racist. And she heard me talking about placing blame and ownership all weekend. And then we had just went through the broker script and how we approach brokers and the tactical side of how we go about it, and how I've realized how a lot of people approach brokers and how we need to. There's strategy behind it, man. And she came and gave me a hug, and she's like, man, I realized that these brokers haven't been racist. I've just been doing it wrong. But the story that I told myself in my mind is that they were racist. And because of that, I didn't take those opportunities to learn. I took those opportunities to place blame as to what I thought the real story was. And to see her take off, do deals, and build relationships it's just been a very, very fun thing. Everything is how we perceive it to be.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a good story. And, all the examples that you were just saying, just thinking about some of the things that I've experienced in my life. And, number one that you mentioned is belief, just having confidence, but without having some type of example. How do you develop confidence? Well, a lot of it is educating yourself, stepping outside of your comfort zone, and looking at little successes along the way. Like you just mentioned earlier, a couple of examples there where I thought, okay, he's giving tidbits of information that actually led you to where you are, and you're already putting the footprint down for your path to success. One is you educated yourself, behind the scenes. You were saying that, how do I develop confidence? I don't want to look crazy. I don't want to look stupid. Well, look at what you did. You listen to these podcasts, you listen to other people, you developed your skills in the background. And I think over time, if you really enjoy something and you want to succeed, you will do what you need to do behind the scenes to make it work, so that by the time you end up meeting investors or people that you want to, put your best foot forward on, you've practiced it so many times behind the scenes that you do look flawless, in front of people, when you present to them. That's probably why when, you take a step back and you realize, my goodness, look at what I've accomplished, at this point in time. And I can see that you're still pinching yourself. Well, at the same time, you've been putting up so much time and effort into this that every once in a while you'll lift your head up and realize, geez, look at all the things that I've done. Of course, people like us taking a step back and looking at you now, it's like, God, this guy's incredible. Look, everything he touches turns to gold, right? But it's the adversity. Look at the things that you mentioned there. Your upbringing, not trying to ask for money. These are things that you've learned along the way, to where you develop a different type of mindset. And you mentioned another thing out there is belief, and throwing this energy out there that what you think and want to achieve will provide that energy back to you. And I totally believe in that. I believe in the energy of the earth. I believe in what you put out is what you get back in, doing good,
Yeah.
and will always come back around in some sort of way, whether you expect it or not. It does come back. But doing what you do as a person, if you do good to the world, something will come back to you. And I love that, how you just mentioned that. Now look at you, you're teaching this course now for other investors. And I just love the story that you have, and you have such a humbleness about you too, that the way that you're communicating, how you're trying to help other people along the way based off the adversity that you've done. So commend you for that. I really do. It's nice.
Thanks, man. Thank you. That's a huge compliment too. That's a very, I appreciate that. I don't even know where to follow up with that, but I appreciate that a ton. It's, I'm definitely not the most, I don't have room for pride. There's no way to be prideful because I'm not the most successful, multifamily investor in the world. I'm not the best instructor, teacher guy. But I'm very grateful. There's very few people that are more grateful than I am. That's because my life is very different. And I pinch myself every day, man, when I wake up in the morning and see Maui. Maui was a dream of mine, Ernest, for so long. We just moved here a couple years ago, and I pinch myself every morning, man. So
that's amazing. And speaking of that, if you don't mind me asking now, back to a little bit of some investing here. You're out there in Maui. I'm sure you have your business partners back here in the mainland. When you guys acquire property, how does that work for you now? You go through your due diligence process and get an asset under management. Do you actually fly out there, or do you depend on your team members to do that for you with boots on the ground?
Yeah, yes and yes. Growth is a great thing. Ryan and I built this thing from the ground up, man. And we would go to every single property, and we were on every investor call, and we were on every broker call, and we did everything, man. And we have worked in partnerships. We believe in delegating different roles here and there. For example, in the Carolinas, we have our investing partners. Their names are Greg and Lisa Parrish. Actually, Greg and Lisa are actually out in Maui right now too on a family vacation, which is very fun to have everyone here.
Great.
So we've delegated. We wanted to scale. So this will be good actionable advice to your listeners. We loved the Carolinas. We loved the Charlotte area, and we really wanted to scale in the Charlotte area. But it's a competitive market, man. It's a very competitive market out there, and we knew that. And one of the things that I learned, and I learned this through sales more than anything, is it's value creation. Like if you can go in, everyone needs something, everybody. So if you can go in, and you can take, of course you have needs as an individual, But if you can push those needs aside just for a second, man, push it aside and flip that focus and figure out what other people need. Everyone needs something. And we realized that Greg and Lisa, man, we met them through a networking event that we were at. And they had these awesome teams. They had, great deal flow, but they're amazing operators, but they weren't the best at capital raising. And so they hadn't been doing these bigger deals. They weren't able to be taking down these bigger deals. Well, Ryan and I were very good at capital raising. It's, that's probably our biggest strength. In the beginning, for sure, that was our biggest strength. I would still say it is, but obviously you grow into operations and everything. And all of a sudden we married our strengths, right? They already had these teams in place. They had a good track record. We had a good track record, and we, could raise good amounts of money, and they could, were boots on the ground to take down these deals. And we married our strengths together to take those down. And then we started to scale and grow, right? And, once again, focusing on our strengths, delegating some weaknesses strategically to business partners. But then we scale, we still do deals with Greg and Lisa, and we always will. We love them. They're super fun to work with, and it's seamless. We've also started to scale and grow our business in a way that, once again, we never really saw or envisioned it when we first started, which is we have employees. We have a number of employees within the company that all do different aspects of the, help us with different aspects of the deal. We have somebody that's an in-office underwriter that is specific, like every deal that comes across our plate, they underwrite. And we have another, and his name's Zach. We have another employee, his name's Hunter, and his major focus is broker relationships, market research, and building those relationships to get those deals and to leverage the track record and the relationships we have, because we obviously at this point have a whole bunch of broker relationships. And then we have Brady's in charge of due diligence once we get the asset under contract. And then Ryan and I, and then we have Melissa, and Melissa is actually my sister. And she's an ass kicker, man. And she actually learned the business, started taking off with the business. And Ryan and I were both like, dude, we need to get Melissa on our team, man. So we brought her into our investment company, and she helps us with the capital raise. And so now we oversee this process, but Ryan and I are also very, very involved in that. Like, we don't walk every single property, me or him individually, but especially me at this point living in Maui, it's a little harder. Mm-hmm. But I go to any big acquisition, I absolutely go out to. And I love to go out to them, though. That's the thing. That's not a chore to me. That's my favorite part, man. Going out, seeing it, looking, touching, feeling. But anytime I'm out there, I'm walking multiple assets when I'm there and seeing the team members and the on-site employees. And so it's different. How we've scaled and how we've got to where we're at is different than how we really handle things now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you for that. And so if you don't mind me asking, as big as your company is now, how many employees do you have, or at least core employees that work for you?
We have remember the investment company, and then we have the education company. And what's funny, because we were just talking about this, and a year ago, COVID happens, right? And this height of uncertainty happens, and as a lot of people were pushing the brakes, or focusing on fear and scarcity, Ryan and I, man, we pushed the gas pedal down. And our goal, man, a year ago, I think it was like to have 4 full-time employees, and now we have 30 full-time employees. We've scaled it's pretty crazy, man. We've scaled our investment company for sure, but we've also has the education company, and those two go hand in hand. They complement each other so well, because everything we do on the investment side is obviously related to the education side, and all these things and learning lessons that we have on the investment side, we teach on the education side. So man, we have scaled a lot over the past year, and that's why you see or maybe say that I have this humbleness about me. It's because it is extremely humbling, because there's no way that I could do what we're doing without the people on my team that help me do it. What's humbling about building a team like that and having employees, Ernest, is bringing somebody on and realizing that they're way better at that role than you would have ever been.
Yeah.
And you see them and they take it and they run with it, and you give them autonomy and they grow, and you're like, wow, that's a humbling thing, man. That's a very humbling thing that I'm once again just grateful for.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sounds like not only the joint ventures that you have with your business partners where they're vacationing with you guys in Maui, but also, just the value that I see. It's come full circle. You take care of your investors, you have these investments. Now you have an education arm as part of your business, and you're spewing out people that are probably following in your footsteps. So, they come back, whether potentially investors or not, but you could just see this nice circle that's happening. That's why you've seen so much growth within your companies itself. So again, that's just amazing to hear. And as you continue to do that, that's just going to attract more things to you, this constant attraction of putting out there in the world and then having things come back to you. So congrats on that piece as well. One thing I wanted to ask
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So what is one common myth about being a real estate investor that you'd like to debunk?
I like the question. Probably that you need money to make money. There's so many myths. First off, there's so many myths, and but this one is key because, and maybe it was because it was what was biggest in my mind, which was, if I'm going to be a real estate investor, if I'm going to acquire these big apartments, the only people that can acquire those are these big, the rich, people. And I wasn't, rich even at all when I started this business. And it's not money. It doesn't take money to make money. It's value. Value creation is the key to wealth creation. And so that's the myth. I feel like far too many people only look for people that can help them, right? We all have these selfish things, but the true key to wealth is finding ways that we can provide value to others, right? No strings attached. Ryan Woolley is the perfect example of this, man. He's the epitome of this because I call him the ultimate connector. He's always connecting people. He's always answering questions for people. I mean, man, it's been so fun to have him in the office the last few days and just see everything this guy does, man. He lives in Orlando. And so we see each other regularly, but in the office, we never get to just work in the office together. And seeing him on phone calls, man, and every time he meets somebody new, he walks in the office. I have Matt here in the office, who Matt handles a bunch of content stuff for us, and he's never met Matt. And one of the first questions that Ryan Woolley always asks is, what are your goals and how can I help you get there? And that's why we are where we're at. I say this all the time. I am successful because I have surrounded myself with amazing people that are way better at every aspect of the business than I am. And this guy is way better at providing value than I am, so, and understanding what value we can bring, because so many times, so we have, if in order to do that, we have to understand the value we can bring, right? Mm-hmm. What value can you bring? I mean, man, identify it. Everyone has the ability to bring value. And if you bring value, you will acquire wealth. You will be an investor, but guess what? You have to identify what that value is and then give freely, man. Give freely of that time, that knowledge, the resources, and know that it will come back tenfold.
I love it. Prior to us recording this too, you asked that same question to me. You're like, Ernest, what value can we focus on so that we can provide some good content for your listeners? So look, you're actually living that. And by asking that, I just automatically realized that it's not for selfish reasons. You actually do want to help. So I think that's great.
Totally. And I've learned that from that guy. That guy gets all the credit there, not me, man. I love that I did ask that because I'm not always the best at doing that. So thank you for pointing that out too. That's awesome.
Hey, absolutely. I pick up on these nuances and, for me, like I said, I finished psychology. That was my degree. So the first thing I realized is I try to read people fairly quickly and just kind of pick people out. I'm not I don't say I'm the perfect person in reading people, but I have a good sense, gut feeling of, my first impressions when I meet people.
And I'm passing the test is what you're saying? No, so I haven't passed yet, but I'm at least on the journey there. I'll take it all day.
There you go. No, it's good. You're good. You mean well. And I definitely feel that you're sincere in what you're trying to accomplish. and you wouldn't be where you're at if you weren't willing to really help people. And I think that's just the true gift that you have. So, our last question that I wanted to ask you, and this is more of an actionable advice, is what
Okay.
actionable advice have you learned is the most important action or pattern of behavior that a new investor should take to take them to that next step towards their goals?
I love that question, man. I'll go two things. I'll give some real estate specific things, but I'll also give some mindset things because I feel like it goes. So I'm going to answer that with two answers, if that's okay. Real estate
Oh, yeah,
wise,
please. Yeah.
always be building your teams. This should be just a constant process that you're going through. And really a daily occurrence. I mean, you start with commercial real estate brokers, to generate, consistent deal flow. And then eventually you'll get some off-market listings, and, you get a few brokers, trusted relationships with brokers, and they'll make you very, very wealthy. So building your teams, always be raising money as well. If I were to break it down into three daily habits that I feel like investors on a real estate side should always have. Number one is building your team. Your team is not only how you get deals, but how you operate deals in a given market.
Mhm.
And then also raising money. And this is, I never go out of my door thinking, all right, today I'm going to raise money, man. That's what I'm going to do. Today I'm going to go raise money. I just have conversations, and I have conversations relevant to my business all the time. And so, in fact, I'll give you this example, man. I was just at the dermatologist getting a skin check done. I got melanoma a little bit ago, so now I have to get these skin checks, and they're uncomfortable, man. And I'm on the table, butt naked, and they're, laying on my belly. They're skin checking, and she's trying to carry on a random conversation. She asked me what I do. I go through like an elevator pitch, which is just conversational about what I do. And she's like, "Oh, you mean syndications?" And nobody uses the word syndications, right? I'm like peek my head around. I'm like, "Oh, you've heard of syndications before?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, I've been studying, And I just haven't. She said something like, "I haven't found an operator that I feel comfortable with." And right in front of me was a tray that had my wallet on it. And I grabbed my business card. And I'm like, "Well, shit, you've seen every square inch of me, man. Like, you should feel comfortable here. Hit me up, And she starts laughing, but it's having conversations and having that definiteness of purpose. There's opportunities everywhere. And then the other side is just, number three would be constantly work on deals, whether that be analyzing deals or walking deals and submitting offers. You'll learn so much from those things, because they're nervous about looking dumb or failing. In reality, you're going to look dumb at some point. You're going to fail at some point. That stuff happens, right? But every time you have to learn from that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And the only way that you can truly learn, the best way to learn, is that on the job, training, which is analyzing deals, walking properties, making offers, having conversations. So those are your daily habits. The mindset side is, I would say, I have a mental skills coach. His name's Dallas Pruitt, and the guy is phenomenal. In fact, we have a podcast too. It's his podcast that he runs. It's more a mindset, which is it's called the Growth Cast, and your listeners can go check it out. It's all mindset based. But that's my mental skills coach, man. And
Nice.
he always talks about one of the things that just has had a huge impact or just stuck with me is catching myself. He calls it catching yourself in the act of error-ridden thinking, or essentially catching yourself in error-ridden thinking, which is so many times we hit this stumbling block and we get bogged down in the problem, right? We put all of our energy in the problem instead of the solutions behind the problem, and if we can, and first we have to change how we've even been taught to think about problems. Like, problems are literally an indicator of potential progress. They're an indicator that we're growing. I think sometimes we have this fairy tale belief that one day we just won't have problems. Yeah, we will, man. Yes, we will. They're always going to exist in our life. And if we can understand that and change how we view problems and identify when we catch ourselves in the act of error-ridden thinking about that problem. If we can do that, then we can, and start to, I identify and obsess over solutions instead of problems. We can begin to tap into just massive amounts of growth. So those are the most important things that I think somebody can focus on.
I love it. I think that's great. You definitely hit on some pretty good points there for sure. When it comes to mindset and this growth that you're talking about, that's one of the things I love to read about is just how we think and how we process things. And just investing in real estate itself, it's such a mindset. It's how you think and how you perceive yourself in what you want to accomplish is what's going to dictate whether you're going to get it or not. So.
Oh yeah, dude. Totally. It's so true, man. That's why I love listening to podcasts like yours and other operators that you interview on your show, because I just learn all the time, man, that these stumbling blocks that we have, you can overcome them. You can absolutely overcome them. It's just understanding that a lot of people have had the same stumbling blocks, and the ones who succeed are those who learn how to overcome the stumbling blocks. And that's all perspective, man. It's all how we view things. So I sincerely, man, Ernest, I appreciate people like you who it's a lot of time and effort to put on a show like this and to edit all the content and to put it out. And I'm so grateful for that, because I listen to podcasts all the time, man, all the time. And I learn all the time. And if we're being honest, all the stuff that I've even talked about today, it's not from my brain. That's stuff that I've learned from other people, and and then at some point find myself regurgitating that information that I've learned. So I'm just grateful for that.
Well, right back at you too, Tyler. It's folks like yourself that are in this business that motivated me to start my podcast. Is I could read books all day long, but talking to people and interacting with, successful folks like yourself, it just makes it more achievable for me. When I talk to you, I can communicate with you. I can ask you the question one-on-one in real time. And that really sinks in a lot more for me.
Love it. That's awesome.
And last question, where can our listeners learn and connect with you?
Yeah, hit me up on social media is probably the best area. Tyler Deveraux. Last name is spelled Deveraux. From there, you can get information for our investment company, education company. And I'm on, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, those major platforms. Or you can go to our website, mfcapitalpartners.com.
All right, Tyler, we could just talk for days. I love this conversation that we have, but of course, we've got a time limit on certain things here on this podcast specifically, but I want to thank you so much for being here today and sharing not only your story, but your life experiences as well. Again, thanks for being on the show, and have a great weekend, everyone, and mahalo.
Hey, mahalo, my man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Breakthrough Investor in Commercial Real Estate podcast. If you like what you heard and you found value in this episode, we would really appreciate if you would give us a rating and a review. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. For those of you that are interested in investing passively in these types of deals in solid cash flowing commercial real estate throughout Arizona and Texas, as well as Idaho and Colorado, then visit us at mvpequitygroup.com. Fill out the investor interest form. That's mvpequitygroup.com. If you close on a multifamily deal or any other type of commercial property in the past 12 months and you want to be on this podcast, then send us an email on our Contact Us page for details. Thanks.